Hello and welcome to Banking Transformed, the top podcast in retail banking. I'm your host, Jim Roos. In less than 2 years, Jenius Bank has surpassed $2 billion in deposits and loans and recently launched a next-generation mobile and online banking platform that promises to transform how customers understand and manage their finances. The focus has been on leveraging technology to deliver personalized insights, eliminating fees, and helping customers live what they call richer lives. I'm excited to welcome back John Rosenfeld, president of Jenius Bank, the digital banking division of SMBC MANUBANK from Japan, to the Banking Transformed podcast. John discusses how digital banking must evolve beyond convenient transactions to become a financial partner that provides actionable insights for customers. By focusing on financial wellness, data optimization, and mind-money connections, Jenius Bank is creating differentiation in a highly competitive digital banking landscape. More than ever, financial institutions must create meaningful differentiation that transcends rate and fees, offering personalized insights, technological innovation, and a genuine understanding of consumers' financial wellness to remain relevant and competitive. But the ability to deploy these type of differentiated solutions has become far harder than it looks. So, John, welcome back to Banking Transformed. Always good to talk to you. You were on the show about a year and a half ago where we discussed the beginning of Jenius Bank. Jenius Bank has since emerged from conversations among the SMBC group out of Japan into diversifying the U.S. market. Can you, for those who weren't listening to the first podcast we did, can you walk us through the journey from that initial PowerPoint presentations to the bank's launch and where it is today?
Absolutely. And thank you, Jim. It's good to be here again. Jenius Bank has been on a fantastic voyage, journey, expedition, and it's really pursuing, something that's interesting, which is to humanize, digital banking and to create a better option than what is generally available in the industry. And the concept was born about 4 years ago, where a group said, hey, SMBC, this very successful commercial bank in the United States and wildly successful broader bank in Asia, said we could launch a consumer business and do it digitally and start from scratch and do it right. I mean, start with a whiteboard and say, if we could create a better bank, what would it look like? So that was 4 years ago. About 2 years ago, we launched our first product, personal loans. Shortly after that, we launched our savings product. And, we basically have the two simplest products in banking. So we have a personal unsecured loan for people that want to, do some projects on their home, or they want to consolidate some debt. And it's a fairly simple process to apply for the loan, 100% automated. And then we have our basic savings account. No fees on either of these things, by the way. And we pay a very competitive rate on savings, probably better than you can find anywhere down the street because we're digital. And so we have a more efficient platform and we pass that benefit on back to the customer.
So you have a brand new mobile and online banking platform that provides personalized insights based on spending and earning behavior. Can you explain a little bit about how this technology works and really how it differs from other offerings in the marketplace?
Absolutely. We came up with two concepts. With a paradigm, if you will, where there's core banking, which is what every bank does. Allows you to put money with them, allows you to go online, see how much you have, see how much you're earning, allows you to move money in and out, review your statements, read your terms and conditions, all that stuff that every bank does. We call that core banking. And then we say, well, what are we going to do beyond that? And we came up with this concept of evolved banking. And it's really everything beyond core, and it's features that not every bank offers you. And we grouped all this into something we call the Genius View. So if you download our mobile app, you'll find this tab at the bottom. And within this space, you're able to link your accounts from other banks, other brokerages. You can look at credit cards. You can look at your entire financial picture in one place. Now, again, this is the consumer is giving us access to their other information, so we can then consolidate and give them insights back. Um, while there are some banks that are doing this, what we call aggregation services, if you will, many of them are doing it to kind of gain a view of the customer's financial situation and then potentially use that information to try to figure out what else they can sell them. We took a different approach. We said, what if we used all that information to actually give customers insights and help them avoid fees, help them make smarter and more confident financial decisions? Now, why would a bank do such a thing that's not necessarily going to bolster their profits? We looked at it and said, if we could build a whole different level of trust with consumers, the next time they have a financial need, we hope they'll come back to us first.
So this sounds very much like what financial institutions and what technology experts are kind of leaning towards when they talk about agentic banking, where you take all the data, you take as much as you possibly can. You first off gain the trust of the customer. You get the ability to access other information, but with that other information, you actually can provide recommendations, almost like a GPS system does, on the best path to wellness. Is this where your organization is going and where your solution's going?
We're definitely headed in that direction. I mean, during the whole process, as we're building out these ideas, we had a saying. I said, we're going to replace the spreadsheet. And everyone was like, what do you mean by replace a spreadsheet? And I said, well, I have a spreadsheet and I keep all my different accounts, my loans, my mortgage, my credit cards, my savings account over here, my CD over here. I keep it all in one spreadsheet so that I can see it all in one place. And I update it regularly. It's kind of my way of checking, my financial situation. I started talking to other people. Bunches of people have spreadsheets. And I was thinking, well, geez, why do they all have spreadsheets? Because there's these personal financial managers, you can download them. There used to be software-based ones that pretty much have gone by the wayside now with so much possible through the internet. But I remember the days when you would download, a Quicken or something like that.
Yeah.
And, but the reason most people use a spreadsheet is they haven't found a tool that does it as well as they can. And I said, well, we can do it better. And so, especially now with the capabilities that are evolving in the data space and analytics and machine learning and AI, I mean, if you think about it, if a consumer gives someone full access to every penny that they have, and not access to move the money, but access to the information, think of how much you can do with technology to identify those things that you may not have noticed. Like, hey, your mortgage payment is due next Thursday, but your paycheck doesn't come till Friday. Now, your bank should know that because those are routine transactions that happen every month. But how many banks ping their customers, say, hey, we got a problem this month. Hey, Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah.
We're a day off. We need to move money. But we should be able to see those things and actually give customers advice as to how to avoid those pitfalls.
So what percentage of your customers currently have linked an outside organization's account to their account with you?
I don't have that information, Jim. Honestly, I can try to get it for you, but we're really at the beginning stages, and so we're not looking at like the numbers of enrollments. And unlike other banks who make this aggregation service something off to the side, which, by the way, the reason they do that is they typically launched it well after they've assembled millions of customers.
Right.
So they don't want to pay a third party for millions of customers if only, let's say, 10% have adopted. We designed the whole bank where this aggregation service is kind of integrated into the entire experience. And so since we're starting small, like you said, we're not trying to scream from the hilltops. We're looking for particular customers that have complex financial lives that want help. But they're also kind of do it themselves, kind of people. They want to be able to interact with a bank that they know is going to treat them fairly, give them competitive pricing, but help them be smarter.
It's interesting because when we talk about this, you're really getting rid of the silos of products and kind of bringing them all together. We talk about, you talked about your spreadsheets. I often talk about the fact that my primary financial institution, my legacy banks, really know a lot about me, but never show me they know me. And as a result, they don't pay attention. They know my flow of funds, as you mentioned. They know when I'm paying a mortgage or when I'm paying a car payment, but they never come to me and say, you know what, we can possibly do this better. We can bring this all together. And it looks like Jenius Bank is actually going to be bringing these things together, back together again, when a customer's been almost forced to diversify their holdings, correct?
So, well, I think the industry has moved towards what I call decentralization of finance, right? I mean, so it used to be much more convenient to have all your financial services in one place. You could move money faster. You could see everything in one place. Now, there's so many more benefits to being able to kind of have a savings account here, have a CD there, have a brokerage account here, have a credit card there. And moving money has accelerated dramatically. So now, worst case, you probably have to wait overnight to get money from one bank to another. But that used to be 3 to 4 days,
Right.
back in the day when you and I got started in this industry. So I think that's led to kind of breaking down the barriers and making it easier for customers to manage their money how they see fit.
It's interesting. You did some recent research on the consumer, and it found that people define richness less by luxury items and more by being debt free, being able to maybe retire early, establishing generational wealth. How does this insight really shape your product development and your marketing strategy at Jenius Bank?
It's at the core. So we did a ton of research to really understand what makes customers or consumers feel more comfortable about money and feel less comfortable about money. You wouldn't believe the number of people that said that they lose sleep about their money, or that it's impacted their decisions about when to get married or when to have children. I mean, the idea that this is money is just such an emotional driver that really has nothing to do with how much you make or don't make, or it's really about, are you making good decisions? Are you comfortable with your decisions? Are you confident? And like you said, richness is not the number at the bottom of the page. It's really, how do you feel? How do you feel confident that you've made good decisions, that you're not wasting money or making mistakes or could have done something better? If you feel confident, generally, it doesn't matter how much you're making, you're going to enjoy life more.
It's interesting because it hits home because I have a 27-year-old, and until the last couple of years when he got out of university, we were still kind of a cash flow family, but we had our son late in life, so we still have mortgages. We have all these things that are not normal for people our age. And that comfort level, no matter how much money you have, the comfort level of knowing, geez, where's that next payment going to? Or where can we take the next vacation, and where will we go? And do we have the money set aside to do that? It's all part of that equation. And it's interesting because the financial institutions, despite having all the information in the world, don't help us with that journey very well. And be it traditional or a digital bank. Today, how big is Jenius Bank over the last, I think, about 2 years in total marketplace existence? How big is Jenius Bank right now?
So we're now, the Jenius Bank itself, and we have over $2 billion in deposits. A little less than that in personal loans, but we're also part of a parent organization that's one of the top 15 banks in the world. So that's one of the things that I always tell our customers, that you can take security in the fact that we're not going anywhere. This is a long-term investment by one of the oldest and best reputation banks in the world. and they're really committed to creating something new and different and better.
What does your customer look like? I mean, if you were to capsulize the demographics of your customer, is it because a lot of the digital banks out there have a very specific marketplace they're trying to reach. Who are you trying to reach, and what does your customer base look like?
Yeah, so the customer, almost every bank will start with a target customer, and we did, but you end up appealing to a broader set around that target. So it's almost like bullseye, and you think the rings around it. We have customers on all those rings as well. But the target was really what we call high potential digital optimizers. And these are folks, we call it that because high potential means that they're going somewhere. They're ambitious. They want to, progress in their in building a better lifestyle and achieving more. The digital part is we really need people that are kind of web savvy, but also digital native. I mean, people that are comfortable banking with a bank that doesn't have branches. Recognizing, of course, that it's still 100% FDIC insured. We have all the same protections that any other bank does, right?
Right.
And then the optimizer piece is we want people that are trying to build a better financial, life and trying to gain confidence and learn more about how to manage their money, because all those tools we talked about, they're going to fall flat on someone who doesn't care. Somebody's kind of like, I don't manage my money, somebody else does, or whatever. They're not really our ideal customer because they're not going to get as much value from us as we intend to provide.
So they're not necessarily wealthy or unwealthy, because a person that may be starting out who's very digitally savvy and wants to be able to manage their relationships, they're a great customer. A person who has maybe quite a bit of funds available, but also really wants active management and active advice to what they should do next, is also a good customer. So it's not really an income base as much as a mental base as to what they're looking for, correct?
It is. It's attitudinal and kind of emotional. And to your point, it's we have a huge number of young customers who
Right.
are very comfortable doing things through the internet. And unfortunately, when we lived through the whole pandemic recently, obviously it was difficult times. But what it drove a lot of us to realize was there's a lot of things we don't have to leave our home to do, and banking became one of the most apparent ones, right?
Yep.
You can deposit, checks by taking a picture on your phone. Well, I know some people that didn't do that until a year or two ago, when it's really been available for about 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's kind of driven a faster adoption of new technology.
And the expectation of that. I think that's one of the things that really is unique about digital banks. Not only can they offer better rates, better fees, better overall products, because they don't have the cost of branches and all the things that come with that. But even more importantly, it's the mental positioning of a digital bank that says, we're going to be like the other digital relationships you have in your life. And I think, we've been talking about a lot in this podcast that the biggest frustration consumers have is when their financial institution can't do the basics the way other relationships, be it a hospitality firm or a retailer or their Uber app, can do. We just expect more. I get frustrated. I'm kind of outside the demographic group, but that's because my profession is much anything else. But there's just times I just throw up my arms going, what do you mean that the deposits come in after withdrawals type thing, and some of the many other things that happen at traditional financial institutions. One notable aspect of your business model is the elimination of fees across the board. How important is that for your customers, or is it just part of that whole managing your money aspect of how you position Jenius Bank?
A little bit of both. I mean, the lack of fees on our savings or our loan product was really driven by wanting to create something better and more compelling than what's available in the industry. And like you were just saying, we created a bank that's incredibly efficient because we don't have buildings, we don't have paper, we don't mail things, so we don't spend any money on postage, right? Now, what we do spend our money on is the customer experience, um, and whether it's digital or whether it's verbal. Like, I mean, our phone center is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Very few banks in America will answer the phone at 3 a.m. But we figure, hey, our customer is digital. The internet doesn't shut down, when everyone goes to sleep. So why should we? And so it's really about creating a kind of a different paradigm for
Yep.
banking than what was out there.
So, John, we were talking a little bit during the break about the fact that, your legacy is big time big banks. You've played very major roles in banks like Bank of America and Citizen Bank, and you've had a lot of roles. And then you took on this role with Jenius Bank at this very foundational moment. How much fun are you having?
I'm having a blast, Jim. Probably what makes my day is the people that I get to work with. And it was so much fun, this about 4 years ago, calling up some of the people I had the most respect for in the industry, people that are friends, but also just fantastic bankers, and saying, hey, we're about to take a ride. You want to join us? And they're like, what do you mean? I tell them, we're going to build a bank from scratch. All those things that frustrate you about one of the banks you're at now or the bank you were at before, we don't have to do any of those. We're going to build it from scratch with brand new technology. We've got the funding. We've got the charter. We have a vision. And they were like, wow, that sounds exciting. So a ton of these people joined us. And you asked me earlier how big we are. We're over 400 employees now. I mean, and these
Wow.
folks are all kind of building a new dream, right? And so, yeah, we have a lot of fun. I get on the phone with everyone once a month, just to kind of have a little bit of a fun call. In fact, I even sometimes wear funny hats and Hawaiian shirts, and just to keep it lively. But it's fun creating something new.
Well, it's interesting too, because we've seen some of the best digital banks globally have a foundation of traditional bankers that know how to do banking, because you still, at the end of the day, you're a banking organization. But with that said, how do you think outside of traditional banking? When we look at financial institutions that are trying to go through digital transformation, some of the challenges is the difference between actually building a digital bank or simply digitizing old banking rules and regs. How do you get out of what you know so well and step into things that really are technology and innovation and things that are not legacy thought processes? I mean, I was in banking 45 years ago. I remember some of the many things we did, everything from the way we managed risk, where I had to bounce to the penny every day, no matter what happened, and then put the penny back in the next day because I found the error I made. Or when you look at doing a new account opening or a new loan process in a completely brand new way with different rules, different elements involved that are more digital. How do you take your knowledge of banking but get out of that realm and say, hey, we're going to do things differently?
Yeah, it's a great question. It was interesting for myself as well as many other folks, because they're used to running, coming into a business that's already running and figuring out how to make it better. It's almost like buying a car and saying, I want to soup up the engine. Or it's probably more aligned with building a new house. Now, you can go and say, I'm going to buy this house, I'm going to tear the thing down and start over. Um, or I'm going to try to, keep the foundation and, all the power that's already coming through the ground, the water, the sewer lines, everything. In other words, it's a whole different story when you walk up and you're looking at a clean piece of land with nothing there, saying, I got to build a house. Well, first we got to get power here. Then we got to get water here. Then we got to build a foundation. But it makes you think differently about, okay, we don't have to fall into the same paradigms. So we talk to customers and say, well, how would you like it to work? But sometimes you have to come up with creative ideas that customers can't even envision. And I used to use an example. If I walked up to someone 30 years ago and said, hey, what do you think if I created a telephone you could carry around in your pocket? 30 years ago, people would be like, what? I mean, they envision this big thing that you pick up and you
Oh, we
dial.
we both had those somewhere in our lives where we had the first digital phones that you fit in your car and they were bigger than a briefcase. Yeah,
Exactly. Or you want to watch a movie on your watch?
yeah.
I mean, it would have been like whatever. So now you almost have to, think about the idea and then test and get feedback. Another great example, Jim. Do you remember back in the day when there were computer mice, but there was also that little eraser thing that stuck out of the keyboard that you could move around, and then they came out with the trackpad. Then they had the roller ball, and you think about it, all of those pointing devices
Yeah.
worked, right? They all worked, but why did this one? Why was this one so much more successful than any of the others?
Yeah.
And I would argue it's pure chance. It just happens to be the paradigm that our human brains was able to adapt to much faster than the other, options.
And
And
we're all different because, for instance, I haven't used a traditional mouse, for years. And when my wife has me work on her computer that has a mouse, I have no clue how to use it because I use the finger trackpad on my iPad. And it's interesting because you get used to different paradigms, you get used to different connections. But the younger you are, the more likely you're able to switch from one element to another element in a nanosecond. Or, we used to have, just huge guidebooks on how to use a computer. Now the duck comes with nothing because they realize that your next iPhone, you kind of knew how this thing worked. Even if you didn't have an iPhone, you had a Samsung or whatever else, and you realize how to use it. It's interesting, the rethinking of everything. But as you said, it opens the doors to new ways of doing things, new ways of working with the customer, ways to understand the customer, because the customer is changing faster than we can keep up with as an industry in most cases. You're at a point now that you've built the foundation, you've seen success in what you're doing. How do you scale? Because a lot of really good digital banks have spent millions, sometimes close to billions, on finding ways to market their services. Yet organizations like Revolut, organizations like Chime in the States, organizations like PayPal, different elements of the digital banking journey have found different ways to scale up. How is Jenius Bank going to be scaling up?
so, kind of in two ways. First of all, we're not going to be like a big splash bank. We're not going to be, the next big Super Bowl commercial, right? And try to bring in millions of customers all at once. We're taking a much more gradual approach because we really want to do it really, really well. And like we talked about earlier, SMBC has a fairly conservative investment strategy, which is, hey, we'll invest for the long haul, but we want to do it really, really well. And so that's one of the reasons it took us over 2.5 years to launch, because we did so much testing with consumers, with internally, with from an information security standpoint, from a risk and compliance standpoint. We take those things incredibly seriously. So I think it's we're going to grow with new products over time, and we're going to grow through new channels. So right now, if you want to get a loan from us, you pretty much have to find us on Credit Karma or Lending Tree or one of these aggregator sites. Same with our deposit accounts, although you can go to our website and open a deposit account. But over time, we hope to be mailing customers, or emailing rather, potential offers for product offerings, but really only where it's applicable and pertinent to that customer.
What's the biggest challenge you face at Jenius Bank right now?
Oh, well, I think it's balancing between, that concept of speed to market with, quality to market, if you will. And you probably have heard plenty of people in the past talk about building an MVP, which is a minimum viable product.
Yep.
And viable means it'll work, right?
Yeah.
And minimum viable means that you're trying to create a product and get it into the market so you can then learn live, like with actual customers. So we've taken a little bit of a different approach. We want to launch an MLP, which is a minimum lovable product. So in other words, it's not just viable. It doesn't just work. It's something that people will really love. And and I think if you look at some other companies like that, I mean, we talked about Apple, for example, they haven't launched a bunch of flubs, right? I mean, pretty much every new product they've brought to market, while of course they've improved them over time, but the first one that came out was pretty darn good from day one.
Yeah, it's interesting. So looking ahead, before our next podcast interview, what products or features can we expect from Jenius Bank, and how do you see the role of the bank evolving in the overall financial landscape over the next 3 years?
Yeah, I think you'll see us more. There was a new digital bank launched about, 2 or 3 months ago, try to get a big splash. And what was interesting was I saw an article in one of the media outlets that basically compared the new bank to us and to one of our other big competitors.
There you go.
So it's nice to be now one of the standards we're getting people or other comparing to us, right? So I think, we're going to continue to grow our presence and try to introduce ourselves to more interested consumers. New products are in the works. I don't want to get into details about which and when, because I don't want to make a promise I can't keep. But like I said, we take our time with the product development. We're constantly improving our product, our offerings, our services, our capabilities. So things like remote deposit capture, which I mentioned earlier, about being able to take a picture of a check and make a deposit. We've introduced that. We introduced a new mobile app. We're rebuilding our mobile app now to bring a next generation of that. We've launched this Genius View experience. And all the capabilities, the ability to link all those accounts. So I think you'll see us continue to expand the experience and then add new product offerings and then be reaching consumers in broader ways than we are today.
It's always good to talk to you, John. We've known each other for many, many years and through different evolutions. And it's fun to find somebody that is having a blast doing what they're doing. There are a couple people that I know in the industry that have moved out of the old traditional banking environment into the digital world and are all having fun. It doesn't come without its challenges. It's not all fun and games. There's everyday challenges that we all meet, regulations and compliance being one. But the reality is just the daily doing business. I mean, it's not always going to be song and games, but it's always good to talk to you. It's good to get a catch up on what Jenius Bank is doing. Congratulations on your recent awards. I've seen quite a few things, as you mentioned. You're now being used as a comparison as opposed to you having to compare to somebody else. And it's good that you have the support of your mothership, as it were, to be able to have the flexibility to build something new and different without being constrained by the way they did things. And Chase Bank has also had that endeavor with their endeavor in the UK, where they actually let things go and say, build it completely from scratch. And that's hard to do for a legacy organization, because that means letting go of a lot of the things and a whole lot of people that are looking over your shoulder going, okay, am I at risk? And that's one of those challenges. But congratulations on the growth. And I was glad to have you back again, and good luck as you go forward.
Thank you so much, Tim. Good to be here.
Thanks. Thanks for listening to Banking Transformed, the winner of 3 international awards for podcast excellence. If you enjoy what we're doing, please take some time to show some love in the form of a review. Also, be sure to catch my recent articles on the financial brand and check out the research we're doing for the Digital Banking Report. This has been a production of Evergreen Podcast. A special thank you to our senior producer, Leah Hassage, and audio engineer and video producer, Will Pritz. Finally, as personal finance continues to intertwine with technology, the banks that succeed will likely be those that help customers not only manage their money, but truly understand it.